Welcome to Films and Stuff with your hosts, Pete Mitchell and Ethan Hunt.
Okay, Pete, we are back.
Ethan, yes, we are.
Wheel of Time. We have come, in a way, full circle.
Indeed.
We started this saying, let's do a deep dive episode by episode. After episode 1, we were both kind of like, I don't think this is really so compelling. After episode 2, we were kind of like, okay, let's keep an open mind. And after episode 3, I have to say, I was actually starting to get into it a little bit. And then we went and we watched 4 and 5 kind of like sequentially. And here we are to talk about 4 and 5. How do you feel having watched now half of this season, essentially? Half of season 1?
So I'll be honest, over the last 2 days, I have finished the series. And
okay, I appreciate your honesty.
I didn't run through the season because I was desperate to watch it.
Okay. It sounds like you needed something to do, or you just don't like leaving something unfinished.
I didn't want something unfinished. And it's just honestly like, it wasn't bad enough for me to say, okay, I'm out. But at the same time, it was just good enough where I was like, oh man, I'd feel guilty leaving it unfinished.
I love your guilt. I mean, we're coming at this from a little bit different perspectives then, because you did finish it. I didn't. So that means you've essentially seen, the second half, and I'm only on the first half. I have to say, after 1, I thought it got progressively much better. And after 4 and 5, I was pretty into it. I have to say I was pretty into it.
Yeah.
There's a lot of things that I like. I mean, there's a little bit of nonsense in here as well, but I have to say, where I was emotionally after episode 5 is dramatically different from where I was after episode 1. I think it kind of filled out a lot of things. It went in some different directions. Some characters were filled out, and I have to say, like, I'm a fan now. I quite like it.
Okay. So let's talk about episode 4 first, before we get to 5. So what did you think? What were you into? What didn't you like? What was your feeling on episode 4?
So I'm starting to like the Aes Sedai. I mean, that's something that I didn't really get after episode 1 and maybe even episode 2, where, all we saw was Moraine, or we saw this one red Aes Sedai kind of at the very opening scene, which gave us nothing. Then we only saw Moraine. And in episode 1, I didn't really like the witchcraft and the fact that she could kind of conjure this wind and stuff. Now I'm starting to understand this a little bit more. And I found that, 4 and maybe even 5, really put this into perspective for me. Now I'm starting to understand the landscape. Obviously, as you mentioned in a prior episode, women are kind of the more powerful, or at least the Aes Sedai are the more powerful genders here. And they've got their little consigliere, which is somehow romantic partner, except for the red Aes Sedai, which for whatever reason are loners and don't have their companion.
They seem to have a disdain or contempt for mankind, for men in general. So from what I understand, in the sense is that magic, or, the use of magic is frowned upon by all except for those who are trained, and typically only the women are trained because the last dragon was a man and he kind of took everything to hell, and so he ruined it for all of the men.
Welcome to Films and Stuff with your hosts, Pete Mitchell and Ethan Hunt.
Okay, Pete, we are back.
Ethan, yes, we are.
Wheel of Time. We have come, in a way, full circle.
Indeed.
We started this saying, let's do a deep dive episode by episode. after episode 1, we were both kind of like, I don't think this is really so compelling. After episode 2, we were kind of like, okay, let's keep an open mind. And after episode 3, I have to say, like, I was actually starting to get into it a little bit. And then we went and we watched 4 and 5 kind of like sequentially. And here we are to talk about 4 and 5. How do you feel having watched now half of the season, essentially? Half of season 1?
So I'll be honest. Over the last 2 days, I have finished the series. And
okay, I appreciate your honesty.
I didn't run through the season because I was desperate to watch it.
Okay, it sounds like you needed something to do, or you just don't like leaving something unfinished.
I didn't want something unfinished, and it's just honestly like it wasn't bad enough for me to say, okay, I'm out. But at the same time, it was just good enough where I was like, oh man, I'd feel guilty leaving it unfinished.
I love your guilt. I mean, we're coming at this from a little bit different perspectives then, because you did finish it. I didn't. So that means you've essentially seen, the second half, and I'm only on the first half. I have to say, after 1, I thought it got progressively much better. And after 4 and 5, I was pretty into it. I have to say I was pretty into it.
Yeah.
There's a lot of things that I like. I mean, there's a little bit of nonsense in here as well, but I have to say, where I was emotionally after episode 5 is dramatically different from where I was after episode 1. I think it kind of filled out a lot of things. It went in some different directions. Some characters were filled out, and I have to say, like, I'm a fan now. I quite like it.
Okay. So let's talk about episode 4 first, before we get to 5. So what did you think? What were you into? What didn't you like? What was your feeling on episode 4?
So I'm starting to like the Aes Sedai. I mean, that's something that I didn't really get after episode 1 and maybe even episode 2, where, all we saw was Moraine, or we saw this one red Aes Sedai kind of at the very opening scene, which gave us nothing. Then we only saw Moraine. And in episode 1, I didn't really like the witchcraft and the fact that she could kind of conjure this wind and stuff. Now I'm starting to understand this a little bit more. And I found that, 4 and maybe even 5, really put this into perspective for me. Now I'm starting to understand the landscape. Obviously, as you mentioned in a prior episode, women are kind of the more powerful, or at least the Aes Sedai are the more powerful genders here. And they've got their little consigliere, which is somehow romantic partner, except for the red Aes Sedai, which for whatever reason are loners and don't have their companion.
They seem to have a disdain or contempt for mankind, for men in general. So from what I understand, in the sense is that magic, or, the use of magic is frowned upon by all except for those who are trained, and typically only the women are trained, because the last dragon was a man and he kind of took everything to hell, and so he ruined it for all of the males.
He ruined it for all of us.
Yeah.
He ruined it for all of us.
Yeah.
That damn dragon. So also, there's a few kind of like storylines that I thought were a little bit interesting. The one that I'm not so, maybe there's 3 storylines that we kind of went through in 3 and 4, which is, or 4 and 5, which is we saw kind of like the 4 potential dragons were split up, right? It was Matt, Rand, and the 2 dudes, and Iguane and Perrin, the boy girl, separately. And then we see Moraine meet up with some other Aes Sedai, and they come across this dude, right, Logain, who we saw kind of in the first scene. And we're kind of like not clear whether or not he's really a dragon or not a dragon, right? How did you...
On the supposed false dragon?
You thought it's...
So first of all, shout out to the actor. I can't remember his name, but it's the same guy who plays the professor in Money Heist.
Oh, that's an amazing call. That's an amazing call, right? Pete. Alvaro Morte.
There you go.
Yes, the professor.
It was gnawing away at me. And then...
didn't pick it up at all. Well done, my friend. That's exceptional.
And it was in this episode where I saw it, where it was, because there's that scene where he's bound by the two Aes Sedai, right? At all times. Yeah. So because he has long hair or shoulder length hair, I wasn't able to put it together. Yeah. But there was that one CGI effect where they have this special force putting like a shield on top of him. And for a second, it looked like, the net. That's exactly right. And it looked like he had short hair for that brief second because of the CGI. And I was like, wait a minute. I know this guy. I know that face.
Oh, man. That's such a good call. That's such a good placement. When you saw him, though, the first time, because we saw him kind of when he was invading, like, this castle. And, then he kind of, like, confronted the king. He healed the king's shoulder. Like, you thought he was a good guy? What was your impression? Bad guy? Unclear?
So, unclear. He seemed like what he was doing is what I would do is if I were a bad guy and I was trying to recruit people to work with me.
Pete, I think you're revealing a lot about yourself.
Look, I don't want to show all my cards,
I'm a little bit nervous.
But maybe I'm the dragon.
I'm a little bit nervous about what's going on here. Okay.
Maybe I'm the dragon. Look, I like to think that if I were in those kinds of situations, I would be the ultimate at playing 3D chess, right? I wouldn't just be one or two moves ahead, but I'd also be one or two dimensions ahead.
Yeah.
And like,
you gotta convince everyone that you're really a good guy, right? The wolf in a
wink.
Wolf in a sheep's clothing.
Yes, that's right.
There's a phrase like that.
That's right. That's right. But anyway, so So because of that, I tend to be a little bit more suspicious, right? I haven't seen any element of him being a good guy or a bad guy. And the fact that, he ends up killing the Aes Sedai, or at least having his men attack the Aes Sedai, or at least sanctioning that attack, would lead me to believe that's not the case, right? Like, you can't claim to be the ambivalent leader who wants to unite the world, but then who also is happy to kill your captors.
Are you a little bit surprised? Like, I thought that whole scene, which I kind of liked, but I was a little bit disappointed in the Aes Sedai power. I mean, they just seemed to be like using their magic, for the lack of a better word, just to kind of like take out these soldiers kind of one by one. I was kind of waiting for someone to just like, pick up like all the trees, like a forest of trees, and just like mow everyone down like all at once. I thought they were kind of going through it.
Yeah, I was waiting for like a really like eruption of power moment as well. What I will say I really like about the Aes Sedai, or this conceptually, right, from the author of the books, is that there are different, I guess, sects within the Aes Sedai represented by the different colors.
The green, the blue, the red.
So the yellows are supposed to be the healers, the red are like the warriors, the blue are the spies, the green are like these, I don't even know. The green Aes Sedai mentioned it, but it was so in passing that I've even forgotten it. Yeah. But I do like that. I do like that because it doesn't just differentiate people by role, but it also gives you an opportunity for a little bit more of like politicking within the Aes Sedai, right? It's similar to Harry Potter's different houses, right? You have Slytherin, Ravenclaw, Hufflepuff, and Gryffindor, and this is kind of like that in a more generalized way. But yeah, I must say I did like that. But I agree with you, Ethan. It was the one thing I've noticed in all the fight scenes.
It's also a little bit like Divergent. Remember that like movie series with like Shailene Woodley, where everyone kind of had like their own little sect, right? And here it's color sect.
Yeah.
It is a nice. I kind of like that. You're right.
The fight scenes, two issues with the fight scenes. One, they're relatively underwhelming, right?
Yeah.
In the sense that there isn't one like climax that ends it in a definitive way.
It's not like the X-Men,
exactly.
There's like Storm who can just summon.
You don't see them working together. You don't see a fastball special. You don't see that kind of thing, where they're all using their different powers to work as a cohesive unit. One.
Right.
And two, maybe it's just me, and maybe it's because it's so underwhelming. I feel like the fight scenes just go on a little bit too long.
Yeah. I mean,
it's the same thing again and again, and like the Trollocs in the first episode, and thereafter, it just feels okay. I'm not which is interesting considering these are some of the quote unquote set pieces that you'd think you'd be hooked into, but for me, I'm just like, okay, get it over with. I'm just not bothered by them.
I hear you. I mean, it's definitely not an action series, and it seems as though the budget really creps out once we get to the action parts, which to be honest is okay with me because there's enough Michael Bay material out there. If you're really interested in action, there's probably other stuff that you can see.
Absolutely.
I think this is intended to be more political intrigue, but I'm with you. If you're going to put an action scene in, like, do it right. And if you say like, hey, it's not about the action, then by all means summarize it.
Summarize it, cut it short.
This whole yawning, obligatory action scene, and it's just kind of like this montage of endless rocks being picked up and thrown at something. I agree, it's a little bit underwhelming.
I mean, we'll probably touch upon this a little later, but I feel like the problem I have with this show so far is that there are so many. It takes bits and pieces from other pieces of media, I think, and it doesn't do them as well. So, a little bit of the sorcery, it's got the hand movements and the complicated hand movements that you see a lot of in Doctor Strange, for example.
Doctor Strange.
Right? But Doctor Strange does it much better, including the CGI for the sorcery and the magic, right? It's got the political intrigue, but then I feel like Game of Thrones, again, I caveat it by saying let's forget about the last season, but in general, or Expanse, which I understand you've seen are now starting to really enjoy.
I'm seeing it and enjoying it.
So it's or even Foundation. You see a little bit of this political intrigue done slightly better. So it picks and chooses from a variety of different TV shows. And again, I fully understand that the books and the source material predates all of these.
Yeah.
But for someone who hasn't read the books and for someone who hadn't even heard of this franchise, ultimately, and I don't think I'm in the minority here. I feel like a majority of people wouldn't have heard of this franchise before the show came out.
Same.
I think that your bar is going to be compared, to Doctor Strange, Game of Thrones, For All Mankind, Foundation, for Expanse, any of them, and that's the. I think that's the problem I'm having, and I'm not saying this is a problem of the show. It could also just be me, is my mind's running in parallel. It's picking and choosing different elements from different shows, or I'm seeing parallels maybe where there shouldn't be any parallels.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the damage that Lord of the Rings and Game of Thrones, right, has really done, is that both of these were so powerful. And the narratives and the characters, were known so well over multiple series or films that it's very hard to kind of see anything in this type of setting or like period piece that's a little bit fantastical and not somehow compared to, to those characters or those stories. I don't have the same problem. Yeah. Although I did at episode 1. Episode 1, I was really negative about it. I was really down about it. I thought you gave me a really lousy recommendation. I don't know if I said that out loud or not, but I was really not so happy about it. But I have to say now it's really redeemed itself. There's a lot of things I like about it, but I'm with you in the sense that if you recommended something else to me and I got hooked on it, I would not feel bad about not finishing this. I don't have anything where I need to see what's happened, but I have to say, like, the Aes Sedai have captivated me a little bit. I like the idea, but maybe I'm giving them too much credit, and the White Tower or White Castle too much credit. I'm calling it the White Castle. The the two side stories, right? Iguane and Perrin. I mean, that's super boring to me, to be honest. I mean, I didn't really enjoy that at all. Rand and Matt, I think that's also didn't really capture me. But I have to say, like, I'm a little bit curious. What do you think their deal is? Is one of those a dragon? Are they bad guys? What's happening? Because it's giving me like all these little teasers, but I'm not sure why they're giving me all these kind of like red herrings. What's the deal?
Yeah. So I like the fake out that was done at the end of episode 3, right? Which is to say, one of the 5 of you is going to be the dragon, and then it was zoomed in on the professor as being the 5th person. So you're like, oh, he's going to be the 5th. But then, again, sorry, we didn't say it earlier. Spoiler alert. At the end of episode 4, you see that's clearly not possible anymore, right? Because during that attack, the Aes Sedai. I
guess. They subdue him, right?
They subdue him, but then they subdue him in a way that implies that
they basically like pull the spirit.
They pull the magic away from him, right? They basically neuter him from magic, effectively from doing any kind of magic. So this
magical neuter.
Yeah, I mean, I can't remember. They call it gentling or something like that. I can't remember. Calming or something like that. But it effectively negates him from being a magic player. That's not to say he can't be a player, because from what we've last seen, he's at the end of.
I feel like that's not the last we've.
Oh no. Heard of. I don't think so either. I don't think that's going to be. That's the last of him. It may be that he's not a magic player, but that doesn't mean he can't be a political player now, because he's still going to have his followers. He's still going to have people who believe in him, and even if he doesn't have magic source flowing through his veins, I'm sure he's captivating enough that he can lead a rebellion of sorts against the White Tower.
What about the 4? What's your take on these 4? So you think one of those 4 is the dragon? If we've eliminated Logain, that means it's Matt, who's super creepy and killed a girl and a family. Rand, who's I don't know, seems like to be this huge do-gooder. Perrin, who now is a little bit weird, and who's the 4th one? Iguane, right? Iguane, who apparently can't do anything.
No, but then I think it's I think the 5th wasn't actually Logain. I think the 5th is what's her face, Nynaeve.
Nynaeve.
Because the way it ends in 4, where she does like a mass healing spell and saves everyone from death.
Yes.
I feel like then all of a sudden she becomes the 5th person, or the new 5th person.
I mean, that's so weird, because if we go back to episode 1. Like, Rosamund Pike, right? Moraine basically went to this village and said, hey, I've been tracking down a dragon, and it's definitely one of you 4. So you 4 are coming with me, because I can't sort this shit out. Yeah?
Yeah.
And is her radar wrong? Like, what's the deal?
You know what it is? And I think this is they're setting us up in the sense that, we learn in episode 5 that the Blues Aes Sedai are like these spies who like hide secrets and have secrets upon secrets upon secrets, and they're very like master manipulators. I wouldn't be surprised if she's keeping something to herself. Maybe she knows who the dragon is. Maybe she was keeping that to herself. I think that's going to play out. And maybe not even in this season. I get the feeling that if I have to compare her to other pop culture shows, at the moment she's giving me vibes of Littlefinger from Game of Thrones.
Yeah. I was going to say, I said it.
Yeah.
I wasn't just going to say it.
I think she's giving me Littlefinger vibes, which is to say, you don't exactly know whose side she's on, and you don't know what she knows or doesn't know. Yeah. And that's the best I can say in terms of comparisons, in terms of anyone, because again, we haven't read the source material.
Yeah.
Right. So, like, at least before Game of Thrones, I had read the books. So I understood the source material. I understood where they were deviating, what their motivations were. Here, I'm coming in purely as someone who's watched the TV shows, and that's it.
If you were Rand and you saw Matt, you don't like him, but we'll get to that. And you saw Matt kill his family and the girl, like, would you just get rid of him? What's the point of like keeping him around? I mean, he seems Matt seems super dangerous. Yeah. I would absolutely not want this dude as my traveling companion, having seen what he's just done, right?
Yeah, it's
Is this friendship? Is this something just storytelling? What's the deal here? I wouldn't tolerate this.
So
like, I absolutely wouldn't travel with someone or sleep, in the wilderness with someone who have just seen like slaughter a family for no reason, right? Possessed or not possessed.
Yeah, so I think that if I were Rand, I'd want to get away from him. I wouldn't want to necessarily take him out, but I'd want to get away from him, especially because I think it's well known to everyone that he took the dagger, right?
Yeah. Well, at least
or is he keeping that to himself? I don't know.
No, I think I don't know, to be honest, what they know. But Rand maybe knows it. I mean, Iguane and Perrin, I don't think know it, just because they've been separated. And remember, even when we went back to that creepy castle, they were kind of separated by the black stuff. But Iguane is the girlfriend of Rand, right?
And by the way, like, I don't see any emotional connection between the two of them. The chemistry, like in terms of just the actors, I don't see any chemistry there, and I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that Rand seems like such a brooding, like almost emo kid, I don't know. I don't see it. I'm not saying that they're not. I'm not saying it's not going to get better over the course of the season and over the course of many seasons. Yeah. I just don't see it.
I have to say those three dudes, Perrin, Rand, Matt. I mean, I'm not trying to be like super critical of those three people, but like none of those characters I find like really compelling. I mean, no one. I just don't find anyone like I'm cheering for or I'm rooting for. Like, honestly,
I'll one up you and say I don't even find Egwene compelling, and in fact, I'm actively. So the difference is I don't actively dislike or like anyone in that group, but I do actively dislike Nynaeve.
Oh, really? Why?
Oh my god, I'm sick and tired of that trope where she's always angry. Like she's always angry and upset. Like, it's so tiring. Yeah. You don't get to call yourself the wisdom and profess to be like this healer who's supposed to be like above it all and then always be angry.
Yeah. Where did that come from? I mean, for me, she just like appeared out of nowhere, right? She was like apparently like, taken by the Trollocs.
After they got split up in episode 3, I think.
Yeah.
Or 2 or whatever it was.
But like, I never followed her. Like, I don't even remember her story from the first episode. And really, I have to say, like, I think that first episode really did injustice to this entire series. For whatever reason, the way that it was filmed, it didn't allow me to connect to any of the characters. I didn't know who I should be following. There was just like so much chaos with the Trollocs and the village and the fighting and the killing. It was dark. I mean, I just feel like that whole first episode didn't really add anything to me. And now I'm caught trying to play catch up on the characters because the first episode like didn't help me like identify anyone. I didn't even know anyone's name,
I think it did a disservice to the show.
Yeah.
And maybe I would think more positively of the show overall if that first episode had been slightly better. I think they were so busy building up this idyllic, the world building of this little idyllic like village almost in the middle of the mountains, and then almost immediately we're ripped away from it. So you spend an hour building up to this the background of this one village.
Yeah.
And by the end of the episode, we've left the village.
Yeah.
So what was the point of that?
Even to one up your one up. Remember the opening scene of this series was the professor like running. Not sure why he's running down the path.
Right.
I mean, with kind of someone next to him, which you find out was some type of hallucination. And then Leandrin, right, the red, like catches him. Although they say he was so powerful that two people had to do it, but then she kind of caught him by herself. Like that whole thing to me was just super, super unhelpful in terms of understanding anything. And I know it was supposed to kind of like set the stage and get me guessing, but I mean, it was just like out of context,
That could have come as like a flashback or a flash forward in an episode in the future.
Yes. Yeah. And now that the engine herself said, oh, this guy's so powerful. It takes two of us to subdue him. That's only half of his power. Like, yeah, but we just saw you like chasing him on a horse and you just put all these rocks down and he fell over and you grabbed him. So, I mean, the whole thing kind of doesn't really jive. And it's another example.
Yeah, because you know what? You raised a really good point because he seemed like he was scared and on the run.
Yeah.
Right? And then all of a sudden at the end of this episode, we see him as this calm and collected guy who's fully in tune with his powers to the extent where they're saying he's fighting back and he doesn't even have a bead of sweat running down his face. Right? Like they specifically point that out.
Yeah.
So, you know what? You're absolutely right. It seems a little
it's cognitive dissonance, Pete. That is cognitive dissonance.
So anyway, so that's episode 4. Again, and then episode 5, what happens? I think they get into
episode 5 we have the big death, right? Remember, we had the lady who the green jacket, the green Aes Sedai, who was killed by Logain.
Oh yeah, that's right. Oh bless, right? Yes. Her ward.
Yeah, her ward committed suicide. I mean, I call it consigliere, but you're right. It's a ward. That dude committed suicide, and you see, how much it impacted not only that whole Aes Sedai community, but especially Lan, right? The ward of Moraine, Rosamund Pike.
This I liked. I liked because it gave a lot of exposition as to, in the sense that it really strengthened the understanding of the relationship between the Aes Sedai and their wards. And this is where, Nynaeve, if she was a part of this, might have stopped being such a grade A pain in the ass.
Grinch. Let's call her a Grinch.
Really, honestly, she's so negative all the time. And
because you're absolutely right, because she's just referring, and it's something we didn't know. I mean, I didn't use the word consigliere, just to kind of refer to the dude as the lapdog of the Aes Sedai, right? We didn't really understand what the relationship was. Now I thought that this episode was very good to put it into context. Weird as it may be, living in, the 21st century that we are, you see the Aes Sedai are very powerful, but they do have this very deep kind of loving, can we say, romantic, emotional connection with their ward. And their ward is, kind of like the knight with their little, what's the person who helps the
Squire.
Knight? The squire. Thank you. Right?
Yeah.
It's like the squire.
So I get the feeling that they're like almost pair bonded, right? Like they go through a ceremony and the idea is that, look, while I'm doing my magic, I'm unprotected because I'm focused purely on channeling magic. Your job is to protect me while I cast. So it's kind of like a symbiotic relationship, right?
It's like the symbiote. Yeah, it's like Venom. It's a symbiote. Or, what the other one I was thinking of was? Anyway, that's a very good analogy right there. Yeah, you're protecting me. You've got my back when I'm casting my magic spells.
This I really liked about that episode. I mean, it's was heavy because, it's something new, and in terms of tone, I think
Yeah.
for this show,
It's something
it was
new.
very different in the
It's
sense
something
that it
new,
was
right?
somber, but it wasn't
Yeah.
cheesy. There was no CGI. It was drama, and it
Yeah.
was like, for me, I felt like, oh wow, I really understand,
Yeah.
right? Like, I get the
Yeah.
grief. I understand now. There's a little bit of
Yeah.
politicking in the Aes Sedai,
Yeah.
within the Aes Sedai. Like, you get
Yeah.
to see the whole. Um,
Yeah.
you meet the grand leader of the
Yeah.
Aes Sedai, the
Yeah.
Tambourine seat or something like that.
Yeah.
Whatever. Right, and you get to see like the council, basically, like the council
Yeah.
of elders,
Yeah.
almost, right?
Cream.
And
Yeah.
you get to see how
Yeah.
the background of the Aes Sedai work.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm a
Mm-hmm.
sucker for that kind of
Yeah.
thing, right? Because it's exposition without it being just an exposition dump. You get to see how the
Mm-hmm.
politics works. You get to see the effects of the relationship that people have on each other, right? And even though everyone
Yeah.
calls each other sisters, they're
Yeah.
definitely sniping between the different sects, right? Between the different colors.
Yeah.
So, I enjoyed that a lot. And then I think this is also the episode where we see that everyone's starting to converge back, right? After they
Mm-hmm.
got separated, you can start to see that everyone's starting to converge back. The two boys make it back at the beginning of the episode, and I think Perrin and
Mm-hmm.
uh, Egwene
Yeah.
get captured,
Iguana.
but then escape.
Yeah. So actually, that's something very interesting. We didn't talk about these dudes in white.
The
What
white
is
cloaks,
his name?
right?
Valiant Child or something like
Sure.
this, right?
Whatever it is, yeah.
I mean,
That goes on the show. That's on the show. I can't remember anyone's for anything.
Yeah, I thought it was. I've started to turn on the closed captioning,
Oh, okay, that's a good
so I
idea.
can try to. Thank you. Yeah, just to try to catch some of the names.
Valda.
I mean, I'm a native English. Val the child,
Yeah.
right?
Eamon Valda.
Yeah, I mean, some of this is just. I mean, we're native English speakers, but I mean, some of this is just like. We're not sure if they're names or words or mispronouncing things. So I turned on the closed captioning. I mean, I know we've got the X-ray as well on Amazon, which is pretty good. But again, we've noted it's hard when you're watching it on TV. But so Val the child doesn't even seem to be the leader of these white cloaks who are somehow the Guardians of the Light or some type of military force that seems to be anti-Aes Sedai. And it reminds me a lot of Samuel L. Jackson in Jumper. Remember that movie?
Oh my God, yeah. Also starring Hayden Christensen.
There we go.
Both Jedis.
Yes, both Jedis. Do you remember that movie where Samuel L. Jackson is like, hey, I'm the super religious dude, and I think anyone who's got these special powers is, the Antichrist, and it's my mission to track these people down and kill them. Okay, fine. Like, whatever. I thought Val the child kind of had something similar, where he's saying, hey, I don't believe that anyone should be witch, should have magic, so I cut off their hands. And that clarifies that first scene where we saw him kill that woman without hands at the stake.
Yeah.
It's not clear who these white cloaks are, if they're like vigilantes, if they're like a secondary force, if they've got any relationship to the White Tower, apart from the color, which is a very prominent theme in this show. But I thought that was a very interesting scene because it kind of explains more about what his or this whole group, like where they fit into this whole thing, right? They're anti-dragon, they're anti-darkness, but they're also anti-Aes.
I think they're anti-magic in general.
Yeah. I don't know.
So I get that's the feeling, and you're right. They're like they almost seem like an ordained by God, almost like crusaders to say, look, we're here to
self-ordained.
Yeah, we're here to rid the world of people who can destroy us, and that includes the Aes Sedai, right?
Yeah, I mean, all good.
So anyway, it's interesting because he makes an allusion when he captures Egwene and Perrin. He says one of the two of you is going to die, and he talks about like when he cuts off he doesn't cut off anyone's hand, but he was talking about how like some sorcerers are so powerful they don't even need their hands to cast.
Yeah.
So I
Yeah.
thought when he said that, I was like, oh, I think one of them's going to lose a limb or
Yeah.
two. But of course, they both escape somehow
Yeah.
through the use of some
Where
kind
do
of.
the dogs and the wolves fit into
That's
this?
the other question is, and this might also be maybe sticking too close to source material, or I assume they are, but I feel like there's too many sources of magic without enough
Too
explanation.
much magic, not enough explanation.
Yeah, a running theme with our podcast, but it's just it almost seems like if one of them is the dragon, all of them are the dragon. Does that make sense? Like Egwene has casted,
I mean, I've
has
got
cast.
yeah, yeah,
Perrin has some kind of ability to bond with wolves. They're afraid of him, or they work for him, or something
yeah.
like that, right? Uh, what's his face? Matt, and since he got the dagger has been able
Yeah,
to see stuff. And Rand, apparently he's got like some
yeah,
kind of special like strength or something. Remember, he took down that door, which the bartender was very clear about. It's like, oh, it would take three
yeah,
men twice your size to
yeah.
take that down, and he's able to take it down himself. So it's almost as if oh, and then Nynaeve, she had that explosive healing power. It's almost as if like
You
the
know,
dragon has been split into five different parts.
like Voltron.
Almost like, yeah, I was just about to say it's like Voltron, and it's or like Captain Planet. It's like where all
Yeah,
five of their powers are going to combine to create this force at the end of the season.
yeah. I agree. I mean, we talk about the dragon like it's one thing, but I mean, it may not be so simplified. It may not just be kind of like there's one person. It may be like there's a group of bad people, right?
Yeah.
I mean, the dragon could be, yeah.
Yeah, and again, this could be another
Yeah.
thing that Moraine is not explaining to the group and holding it back for dramatic purposes and things like that. We have no idea. I'm
She needs to be a better communicator. We need better
well. I
communication
mean,
from her.
in that sense, then she's doing the bang up job, right? If she's a spy, that's the last thing she wants to do is communicate everything, right? Her whole deal is about.
Can I make an observation? You mentioned Perrin and his connection with the wolves. First of all, I find that trope to be so tired, but that's so Game of Thrones to me, right?
Yeah.
Like who was it? Jon Snow who had like the big wolf?
Yeah, the Snows
Like,
in general, the not Snows, sorry, the whole family up north, the Starks in general.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I just found that this thing, again, it was kind of weird. We saw them like wandering in like this plains, and then Perrin obviously had something with the wolves. Then the wolves came back. Like, I mean, that's really not explained, and I really didn't like that. Like, just it seemed to be too convenient, where it just kind of like appeared out of nowhere. Like, hey, now we're going to introduce this new thing that we've never discussed before. But this dude now has like a connection to wolves, and whenever he needs to summon it, like all these wolves are going to come and attack all these like guardians of light. Just kind of like it just seemed like been there, done that before. Again, like the source material is probably independent of this, but I just felt like that was it wasn't really compelling to me.
No, it definitely wasn't. It definitely again, and this
Yeah.
I know I'm harping on about it, but it just feels like if this weren't an adaptation of a novel or a series of books, I would say that it would be the equivalent of you and me sitting in a back room somewhere, looking at our Netflix, HBO, Amazon, and any other streaming platform list and grabbing tropes and bits and pieces from like 15 different shows and cramming them not so well in one series. Yeah.
It's definitely a plate of nachos. Yeah, we've taken a little bit of something and mixed it all together.
Yeah, it seems like it's trying to be a jack of all trades, and it seems like it's doing it in a very. And again, I'm not saying that this is the case, but it seems like this is a very meta take on how to build a TV show in 2021 and how to sell what do you think would sell successfully? Well, let's look at the 10 most popular shows and movies in the last 5 years. What have they had in common? Or what are the things that everyone really liked about Doctor Strange? Let's pull that out. What is the thing that everyone really liked about Game of Thrones? Let's pull that out. And then let's put all these things into one show.
I agree. But there's two things that I think are redeeming here. And I agree with all that criticism, absolutely well-deserved. Two things that I think are redeeming about this is I like the Aes Sedai. That's something new, especially with the warts. And no one in here, apart from Rosamund Pike, which we've mentioned before, and now, Logain, the professor from Money Heist, are very well known, and I like that everyone is a blank slate. We're going to talk about something else later in our next episode, where there's a lot of big names, and those big names, it's really hard to dissociate big names from characters and see them as this independent character and not as, A-list actor so-and-so or A-list actress so-and-so, right?
Yeah.
I know you thought I was thinking of, but you know what I'm really thinking of? I'm really thinking of Don't Look Up on Netflix. Yeah? Which we should probably
Oh, interesting. Okay.
That as well.
Yeah.
But that is chock full.
So it's a
chock.
Yeah. But that knife cuts both ways. So it's advantageous if you're a new actor. As a watcher of series, of TV shows, and even as the actor, if your acting is very good and if your role turns out to be done really well, this can be the show that kind of defines you. But at the same time, if you're a blank slate, if you don't come off well, and if the show comes off as really pants, you also run the risk of being, known for it being really
that's
so,
life under
I agree. I agree.
Of Hollywood,
Yeah.
Or in Amazon,
I don't disagree.
Wherever they're located in the Northwest. Yeah.
Anyway, so look.
I'm going to finish this season.
Let's have a chat after you finish the season. Episode 8.
Yeah. So there's only 8. So I'm on number. I finished 4
and 5.
I did not. Did I finish 5?
Yeah,
I did. Yeah. So I have to do 6, 7, 8. So let me finish 6, 7, 8. Let's do another episode and do a season 1 recap. I don't know. Has this been optioned for a second season? I imagine yes. Right?
I imagine it must, because Amazon is desperate for content, and like Expanse is in its final season. Other than, and I'm sure they have other shows, don't get me wrong, but in terms of like really blockbuster level stuff, I think this is really all they've got left going on. I don't know what their status is on their Lord of the Rings show.
That's the thing is, though, I also feel like Amazon is going, everyone kind of is chasing this blockbuster, right? Everyone is chasing Game of Thrones, but I'd be equally happy if Amazon would put 5 things out, kind of more niche, lower budget, and compelling. I'm kind of like more interested in watching like 5 unique things rather than just this one big blockbuster, right?
Yeah, I don't disagree. I think this is where streaming services like Apple will excel, and to a lesser extent Hulu.
Yeah.
They're saying, look, we're not gonna spend $1 billion on 2 shows.
All numbers approximate. Yep.
Nice caveat. We're not going to spend $1 billion on one show. We're not going to option the rights for these kinds of shows that are going to end up costing us a boatload. We're going to do a bunch of smaller miniseries, and that's not to say Apple hasn't spent money. Apple, you can see, like, if you look at Foundation, you can tell they've put serious money behind Foundation. And even for All Mankind, they've put significant cash behind these shows, but it's, we're still, they're doing 4 or 5 smaller drama, character-driven shows. Yeah. Whereas, Amazon, I think, because it's got such a huge library and it's trying to compete with Netflix and with Disney Plus, where they're saying, look, we're not a content generator. We're not known for being a content generator, so we have to make a big splash. And how do you make a big splash? let's
Yeah.
option Wheel of Time. Let's option Lord of the Rings, right? So
there's really
which
a
is,
race. There's really a race for intellectual property, and MCU deserves a lot of the credit, but also some of the blame for the fact that everyone is pushing on these, big things that they can make into 8 series and, like tout it as their flagship. Whereas, some of the things that Apple did, I know they brought in Tom Hanks, but Tom Hanks, he had like 3, 4 standalone movies, all kind of like without any other characters, right? He had
Greyhound,
Greyhound.
Yeah.
I feel like there's another one, right? And all,
yeah, but smaller, lower budget-esque type films, which are very micro level. It's not, Saving Private Ryan scale epics.
So anyway, I think definitely let me watch the last 3 episodes of this season. Let's have another recap. And let's see, one, if we think it's compelling enough that we go forward on season 2, and also like kind of where we see this going. Because obviously I think we've kind of at least now understand that there's 3 major factions, Aes Sedai, Dragon / Darkness, and the White Light. And let's see how we think these guys are going to clash in the future. Yeah?
Oh, definitely. And the advantage we have is we're early enough in the reviews here cycle that our words might actually influence season 2.
I would even delete the word might. I'm sure that our words are influencer. Definitive influence.
I agree. When you see Ethan and Pete named as the new head writers for Wheel of Time season 2, you'll know we'll have made it.
Yeah, I'm looking at the Wikipedia, right, where they've got the directors, and there's different directors and different writers. Why do they do this?
Probably so that it's more efficient, right? In terms of timeline.
It seems so.
In terms of writing, it's faster.
I guess so. So there's I guess I see it like if you look at it, episodes 1 and 2, same director. 3 and 4, same director. 4 and 5, 5 and 6. Okay, right? 4 directors, each get 2 sequences. That's tough though, right? We've seen that from the Star Wars disaster, right? Where someone comes in and says, hey, thanks a lot for the pile of crap that you left me. How am I supposed to straighten this out, right?
Yeah, but that's where I think Marvel and Disney actually succeeded, was they said that, look, here's our bulletin board, and on this bulletin board, or on our whiteboard rather, here's the grand vision we're going to have, and I don't care if each movie is a success or not, we're not deviating from this plan.
I agree.
We're in 2000 here, we are here, and in 2020 we're going to end with Infinity War, and this, how we get there, this is the timeline. Yeah. We're not deviating from that. I think Jon Favreau and towards the later end of it, the brothers who directed Infinity War and Captain America 3, they were instrumental in saying, listen, we have a vision, and that's what you require, which I think this is where Warner Brothers falters with DC, is to say that, let's get this director and he'll have an idea of what he wants to do and let him run with it. And when it was Chris Nolan, that was fine for the 3, but the moment they left that universe, the moment they said, okay, well, Chris Nolan's no longer guiding the ship, it all went off the rails.
Usually the train goes off the rails, but in this case, it was so bad, the ship went off the rails.
Yeah, that's right.
But have you noticed, in terms of the Wheel of Time, I have to say, until I saw this, I would not have guessed that there were different writers or directors mixed and matched for each episode. I have to say, I give them a lot of credit. It seemed very, apart from episode 1, it seemed very consistent and stable.
Yeah, I think it's also got a lot to do with the fact that they're drawing from one source material. Yeah. So it's, where you'd see a little bit more difference, I'd imagine would be in directorial style rather than in writing style, because you're basically saying, here is your source material, here's the story in these, 13, 14, 15 books, whatever it is. Pull 8 episodes out of book number 1, right? So I think that becomes a little bit easier to do, where I see potential issues of not issues, but where I see wildly differing styles would make a difference. Wouldn't be in the writing, would be in the actual directing job.
I have to say, I think that's right. I mean, I think I don't know if it's comforting to be a writer and have source material that you can rely on. It obviously prevents writer's block. But at the same time, I'm not sure if it's really exciting to write kind of dialogue or scenes when you've already got, a little bit of a high level, framework to follow, right? I mean, as a writer, you usually want to, be creative. You still have creativity, but I mean, in terms of, following kind of the narrative, you've got to stick to it a little bit. So I guess it's really about dialogue and, character development. Instead of just kind of like finding new inspiration for where the story is going.
That's right. But when we're writing season 2, I promise you we're not following that source material too closely.
Do you think that your forte or what you specialize in is more dialogue or more like the narrative?
I think narrative over dialogue.
Like I find myself as not great on dialogue.
I think I'd be more narrative driven. I think I'd be in terms of big picture, like I think I could drive the story from A to B in a unique way. But I don't think, if you told me to sit down, I'd want to have someone like Kevin Smith, who's like a guy known for only talking, to sit down, or even Quentin Tarantino, another actor, another director who I think is very, very good at the nitty gritty of dialogue between two humans. So that's why, anyway. That's my thoughts on 4 and 5. I think 6, 7, and 8.
6, 7, 8. Seasons are short, right?
I like that.
Am I missing something?
It's a very British way of doing it.
It's like how
it allows you to, not that they do it, but I think what it allows you to do is it allows you to focus on getting the season and the story arcs in a very tight and crisp way. If you look at these normal procedurals, which are like 20 episodes long, 25 episodes long, I don't think I could last 25 episodes of this show in a season, in a year.
But what does it matter? I mean, to be honest, isn't a season just a little bit generic? Or are you saying like this is how long it's going to be before we take a summer holiday?
That's basically it, yeah. Because we need a couple months to write. We need a couple months to plan. We need a couple months to shoot, and then probably we need a couple months to edit.
When we were kids, how many episodes do you think like Dallas or Falcon Crest were when we were kids?
Oh man, so like the soaps, like the stereotypical soaps were on like 4 or 5 days a week, right? And like
but like Dallas was like, how can we search this? How many?
I'm looking it up.
Who's faster? By the way, we need a research assistant. If you're interested, contact Pete.
Same. Anywhere between 24 to 30 episodes in a season. 23 to 30 episodes in a season.
Dallas had 30 episodes in a season?
Yeah, they had 31 was their peak in season 9.
God bless. Do you see this? Over 14 seasons, there were 357 episodes of Dallas?
I mean, that's insane. That's insanity. And if I remember correctly, Dallas was like an hour-long show. It wasn't a half-hour like drama.
Oh, yeah.
That is insanity.
What was on longer, Dallas or Falcon Crest? I feel like those are the two competing, like...
Oh, man, that's a good throwback.
I feel like those are the two competing... like primetime soaps, and I feel like those primetime soaps, did they have more or less?
No, so Dallas killed it comparatively.
Oh, where's Falcon Crest?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 seasons, but also all long.
Oh, Falcon Crest is based in what state? California, Texas? Where's Falcon?
California, if I remember correctly. It was about wine, right? Wasn't it based on a vineyard or something?
Oh, to be honest, I don't know.
I'm pretty sure.
I can only vaguely...
Yeah, the California wine industry,
that's right. I can only vaguely remember. I mean, that's a clear spin-off of Dallas, right? Dallas, Texas oil industry. They said, okay, we gotta compete with Texas.
Let's do Dallas, but in California.
And then, is there a Florida equivalent where they did like the citrus industry or something?
I don't know. Where are the Waltons?
That's Arkansas. Maybe there's something in Minneapolis about the 3M family that got canceled after one season when no one was really compelled about watching.
So funny.
An intellectual property patent company.
But yeah, anyway, so before we digress too much of a tangent.
I think that's already, that ship has sailed off the rails. Okay.
All right, good. So we reconvene after you've seen episodes 6, 7, and 8.
Indeed.
Where we give you a quick breakdown and our thoughts on the end of season 1 and where we think season 2 is going to go.
Correct.
Again, based on the fact that we haven't read the books, so this is really going to be us going out on a limb.
This is true limbing. Okay. Pete, what do we have in our next episode coming up?
Ethan, I think we're going to we'll do a short-ish episode on The Matrix.
Yes.
I just saw that and I do want to discuss it.
Resurrections, I saw it as well. It's number 4. Please join us next time. We'll go through that.
Indeed.
I'm Ethan.
All right. Thanks, Ethan.
Thank you for listening to another episode of Films and Stuff. If you haven't already, please subscribe and review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever podcasts are downloaded. Films and Stuff. There is no substitute.